Leave out extra food, scoop the litter box, toss a toy on the floor. Most people think that's enough when they leave a cat alone. The problem is, a lot of what feels responsible to you can feel deeply wrong to your cat. Because the biggest mistake is not forgetting food. It's forgetting how a cat experiences absence. And that's why one small habit can make a cat stop eating the moment you leave. Another can trigger peeing on the bed hours later. And the worst one of all looks exactly like love. Cats have this unfair reputation for not caring, like they're tiny, elegant roommates who tolerate you for rent-free housing and chicken pâté. But that story falls apart the second you look at the research. Oregon State's attachment study found that most cats use their human as a source of security. Not in a dog way, not loudly, not obviously. But when stress enters the room, you matter far more than most people realize. So when you leave, your cat isn't just alone. They're left with whatever environment you built in your place. Every smell, every perch, every closed door, every dirty tray, every missing routine. That environment either says, "You're safe," or it says, "Something is off." And this is where most owners accidentally create stress without seeing any stress at all. And the first mistake is so common. People call it preparing. The first thing you should never do is leave one giant bowl of food and assume the job is done. To you, that looks generous. To your cat, it often creates a weird, empty day. A few fast mouthfuls, then hours of nothing. No hunt, no problem solving, no sequence. Just a calorie dump and a vacuum of stimulation. International Cat Care and Feline Behavior Guidelines both point to the same issue. Cats are hunters by design. Predictable bowl feeding can leave a void, especially indoors, where there's already less natural challenge. That void gets filled with overgrooming, overeating, pacing, or pure boredom. Milo, a chunky orange tabby with the emotional resilience of a Victorian poet, used to inhale breakfast in 40 seconds and then scream at the hallway for an hour after his owner left. The fix wasn't more food, it was slower food. Hidden kibble, a puzzle feeder, tiny hunts around the apartment. Suddenly his day had chapters instead of one opening scene and a long, dull collapse. And that leads straight to mistake number 2. Because even enriched cats can get stressed if their bathroom tells them the territory is compromised. Never leave a dirty litter box and tell yourself, "It's just for today." Cats don't experience the litter box as a chore. They experience it as a critical resource. A clean, usable, predictable place to eliminate without threat. When that resource feels contaminated, blocked, too exposed, or just gross, the cat doesn't think, "I'll wait." The cat thinks, "I need another option." Cats Protection recommends cleaning before you go, and feline environmental guidelines are even more revealing. Toileting areas should be separate resources, and cats benefit from having choice. In multi-cat homes especially, one box in one corner is not a plan. It's a gamble. This is where Luna comes in. Quiet grey coat, green eyes, never caused trouble. Until every Friday night when her owner stayed out late. Then Luna peed on the bath mat. Not randomly, predictably. The tray was technically there. But by the end of the day, it wasn't acceptable to Luna. Once a second tray was added, and both were cleaned before every long absence, the behavior problem disappeared. But here's where it gets strange. Some cats don't protest with messes. They protest with solutions. Never assume a quiet cat is a calm cat. This may be the most dangerous myth in cat ownership. At Ohio State's Indoor Pet Initiative, signs of separation distress in cats include excessive vocalizing, yes, but also not eating, not drinking, vomiting, overgrooming, destructive behavior, and inappropriate elimination. In other words, the cat who curls up and says nothing may still be spiraling. Look at the body, not the volume. Dilated pupils, a low tail with the tip flicking, over-focused grooming on the belly or inner legs. Ears rotating backward at tiny sounds. A reunion that looks extra affectionate, but is actually frantic regulation. Shadow did this. Big black cat, velvet fur, deeply attached to one person. No dramatic meowing. No shredded couch. He just stopped touching his water while she was gone and greeted her like she'd returned from war. Everyone called him sweet. He was sweet. He was also stressed. And this is the part most people get completely wrong. The answer is not constant stimulation. It's controlled security. Never leave your cat without a real refuge, not just a room. A refuge, a hiding place, a raised perch. A place with visual control and partial concealment. The AFP and ISFM environmental guidelines are crystal clear here. Cats need secure hiding spaces and elevated resting areas because height and cover reduce stress. A cardboard box on its side can matter. A cleared shelf can matter. A wide window perch can matter. Think about what your home feels like after you leave. The refrigerator hums. Pipes click. A truck hisses outside. Maybe another cat passes the window. If your cat has nowhere to withdraw and nowhere to watch from above, they're forced to absorb the whole environment at ground level. That's why some cats flatten under beds, while others station themselves on top of the bookshelf with their paws tucked, ears twitching like radar. They are not being antisocial. They're building safety out of architecture. Now forget food for a second, because the next mistake has nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with control. Never cluster all your cat's resources in one spot. Food next to water. Water next to litter. Litter next to the laundry machine. Scratching posts somewhere else entirely as an afterthought. For humans, that's efficient. For cats, it can feel awful. The environmental guidelines recommend separating key resources, food, water, toileting, resting, scratching, play, into distinct locations. Why? Because cats don't just need access. They need options. Choice lowers stress. Control lowers stress. Distance lowers tension, especially in homes with more than one cat. What the internet says is, cats are easy. Just leave out what they need. What the research actually shows is that how you leave those resources matters. One water bowl across from the litter tray may technically count as water. It may not feel safe enough to use. And if you have two cats, this mistake becomes explosive, because now absence doesn't just reveal boredom, it reveals politics. Never leave cats home alone together and assume companionship solves everything. Some cats are bonded. Some are peaceful roommates. Some are running a cold war with nap breaks. When humans are home, we often buffer tension without noticing. We interrupt staring contests. We open doors. We create movement. We redistribute attention. Then we leave, and the social geometry of the house changes. That's why guidelines emphasize multiple, separated resources and escape routes. In a multi-cat home, one cat shouldn't have the power to guard the only litter box, the favorite perch, or the route to the water. You'll see the clues if you know where to look. One cat pauses at a doorway. Another holds the hall with stillness. A tail curls tightly around the paws. Pupils widen. The lower-ranking cat delays eating until you get home. But here's where it gets even stranger. Sometimes the stress isn't another cat. Sometimes it's your goodbye. Never turn your departure into a dramatic ritual. Long speeches. 10 forehead kisses. Repeated "Mommy will be back soon." Picking your keys up. Putting them down. Pacing. Sighing. Hugging again at the door. You think you're reassuring your cat. You may actually be flagging that something important and unsettling is happening. Cats are pattern detectives. They learn sequences. If every departure comes with tension in your voice and a flood of unusual attention, the ritual itself can become the warning siren. That's why stable routine matters so much in feline behavior guidance. Predictability calms. Emotional theater does not. A cleaner exit is often kinder. Brief interaction, maybe a small food puzzle, then leave. No ceremony. No guilt cloud hanging in the air. And speaking of guilt, there's a mistake people make because they feel bad, and it backfires hard. Never punish the bad behavior that happens after you get home. Not the vomit. Not the shredded paper towel. Not the pee beside the box. Not the desperate meowing at the door. From the human perspective, it feels like the cat knows what they did. From the cat's perspective, something upsetting happened, you vanished, and now you've returned acting unpredictable and scary. AVZAB's broader position on aversive methods is simple and important. Punishment risks welfare and damages the human-animal bond, while reward-based approaches are safer and more effective. With cats, punishment is especially corrosive because it adds social instability to environmental stress. So, if your cat's behavior worsens after you leave, don't become one more thing they have to fear. Read the behavior as information, not betrayal. Information, which brings us to one of the most underestimated mistakes of all. Never leave hidden hazards out just because your cat usually ignores them. Wires, string toys, toxic plants, human food, cleaning products, medications, open windows that look secure until a bird lands outside. Cats Protection explicitly calls out these risks before leaving a cat alone. And the ASPCA's toxic plant list is a brutal reminder that common houseplants can be dangerous, especially lilies, but also other everyday ornamentals and bulb plants. The reason this mistake is so nasty is that boredom changes behavior. Curiosity changes behavior. A house at noon is not the same house at 8 p.m. when shadows shift, and your cat has run out of interesting things to do. That harmless string wand left on the couch becomes a chewing project. The plant on the sill becomes an experiment. The cracked window becomes a mission. And now we get to the mistake that sounds harsh, but saves cats the most suffering. Never leave your cat alone for longer than their age, health, and temperament can actually handle. Cats Protection says around 12 hours is the outside edge for many adult cats. And even that should be occasional, not routine. Kittens, seniors, and cats with medical or complex needs need more frequent checks. This matters because people confuse a cat's ability to survive alone with a cat's ability to remain well alone. Those are not the same thing. A healthy adult cat might physically make it through a long stretch. That doesn't mean the food stayed fresh, the litter stayed usable, the water stayed clean, the environment stayed safe, or the cat stayed emotionally regulated. And if your cat already shows signs like frantic greetings, appetite changes, over-grooming, or bathroom accidents after absences, then the last mistake becomes the deepest one. Never tell yourself, "My cat is just being dramatic." That sentence has delayed more understanding than almost anything else. Because maybe your cat is not dramatic. Maybe your cat is trying to solve a problem with the only tools they have. Body, routine, territory. Elimination, voice. When Luna hid for hours after every work trip. When Milo screamed after inhaling his breakfast. When Shadow stopped drinking until his person came home. None of them were punishing their humans. They were revealing where the environment failed them. And that's the reframe most cat owners need. Your cat does not need you to feel guilty. Your cat needs you to think like a cat before you leave like a human. Separated resources. A place to hide, a place to climb, something to hunt. Fewer hazards, less emotional chaos, more predictability. That is what love looks like when the door closes. Because being a better cat parent is not about making your cat need you less. It's about understanding what your absence feels like from their side of the room. Not less attachment. Different attachment. And once you see that, you start noticing everything. The ear swivel before the retreat, the tiny tail flick beside the water bowl, the way your cat chooses height when life feels uncertain. And if you want to know the next layer of that story, the one most owners miss completely, wait until you see the subtle body signals cats show, before they bite, hide, or shut down. Because by the time the obvious signs appear, your cat has usually been talking for minutes.